Good morning, ma. Welcome to Alpha Online Education, Commerce Theory part for the first year's English medium. The chapter that we are dealing with, that is the 9th chapter, Source of Business Finance. So what are the sources are there for a business to rise the finance? Okay, that the things we are going to study in detail in this chapter. So this is the first session of this chapter. So how the business will rise the finance? Okay, so there are different ways of rising the finance. So what are those ways? How the business will rise the finance? We will discuss in detail in this chapter. So first, the classification of non-institutional source of finance. So non-institutional means we are not approaching to banks, we are not approaching to any government agencies or institutions. Okay, in these without approaching to the non-institutions, okay, without approaching to any institution, how we can rise the finance, those things we are going to discuss in this session. Okay, so the source of finance is generally classified into 3 categories. The first source is long-term source, that is above 5 years is the time duration of that source, and the medium term source, that is above 1 year and below 5 years, above 1 year and below 5 years. Short term source, that is below 1 year. So these are the sources by which we can rise the capital. We can rise the capital, which is very important for the business in order to incorporate. Okay, so in that first long term source of finance, in the long term source of finance we have different things. Shares, in the shares that are classified into 2 categories: equity shares, preference shares. Next, retained earnings, debentures. Those all things are there which we are going to discuss one by one in every section. Okay, in every session we are going to discuss each and every topic in detail. So in this session we are going to discuss about the equity shares. So before that, the introduction to the long term source of finance. The capital obtained by issue of shares is known as share capital. Okay, whatever the capital you are obtaining, the capital, whatever the capital you are obtaining by issuing of shares, okay, by issuing of shares in the stock market. Okay, వెజిటేబుల్ మార్కెట్ ఎలా ఉంటుందో షేర్స్కి కూడా షేర్ మార్కెట్ ఉంటుంది. మరి మన ఇండియాలో షేర్ మార్కెట్ ఎక్కడుంది మేడం అంటే 2 బిజినెస్ స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజెస్ ఉన్నాయి మన దగ్గర. 2 పెద్దవి, 2 యాక్చువల్లీ 3 ఉన్నాయి. ఏంటివి అంటే బాంబాయి స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్ BSE, బాంబాయి స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్, నేషనల్ స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్, కలకత్తా స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్. సో ఈ 3 స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజెస్ అనేవి ఇండియాలో టాప్ మోస్ట్ స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్. వీటిలో ద మోస్ట్ నెంబర్ 1 స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్ వచ్చేసి నేషనల్ స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్. ఎక్కడుంది మేడం ఇది అంటే బాంబాయి స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్, నేషనల్ స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్ 2 ముంబైలో ఉన్నాయి. నెక్స్ట్ కలకత్తా స్టాక్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్ కలకత్తాలో ఉంది. ఓకే, సో capital obtained by issue of shares, when we are gathering the capital ante mooladhanam. Okay, in order to start the business we require a capital. So if we are issuing the shares in order to get the capital, that capital is known as a share capital. The capital of the company is divided into small units. Okay, the total capital of the company is divided into small units. The small units are known as shares. Okay, those small units are known as shares. For example, a company can issue 1 lakh shares. A company can issue 1 lakh shares. షేర్ అంటే పేపర్ ఉంటుందమ్మా. షేర్ అనేది పేపర్, ఒక డాక్యుమెంట్, పేపర్ డాక్యుమెంట్ ఉంటుంది. సో 1 lakh పేపర్స్ ఇష్యూ చేస్తున్నాం ఆఫ్ ₹10. ఒక పేపర్ కాస్ట్ ఎంత అంట? 10 రూపీస్ అంట. ఓకే, ఈచ్ ఫర్ ద టోటల్ వాల్యూ ఆఫ్ ₹10 lakhs. ₹10 lakhs. సో ఇక్కడ చూడండి, కంపెనీ షేర్స్ ఎన్ని ఇష్యూ చేస్తుంది? 1 lakh షేర్స్ ఇష్యూ చేస్తుంది. ప్రతి షేర్ విలువ ఎంత? ₹10 రూపీస్. రూపీస్ ఈజ్ 10 రూపీస్. ఇప్పుడు మీరు టోటల్ వాల్యూ కనుక్కోవాలనుకుంటే, ఇఫ్ యూ వాంట్ టు నో ద టోటల్ వాల్యూ ఆఫ్ ద క్యాపిటల్, then you have to multiply number of shares into price per share. Okay, number of shares into price per share, then you will get the total value of the amount, total value of the capital, that is 10 lakhs rupees. Okay, the person holding the share, when we are holding the share, holding means పట్టుకున్నాం. Okay, when we are holding the share, when any person holding the share, that person is known as shareholders. Okay, if a person is holding the share, that person is known as a shareholder. We have two types of shares. One is equity share, another one is preference shares. Okay, one is equity share and another one is preference shares. ఇప్పుడు in this session we are going to discuss about the equity shares with merits and its demerits or limitations, అంటే advantages and disadvantages of equity shares. Okay, so equity shares are also known as ordinary shares. సో ఈక్విటీ షేర్స్ని ఏమని అంటాము? ఆర్డినరీ షేర్స్. ఓకే, వై వి ఆర్ కాల్డింగ్ ఇట్ యాజ్ అన్ ఆర్డినరీ షేర్స్ మీన్స్ it represents the ownership of the company. So who are holding the equity shares? Those are the owners of the company. Okay, who are holding the equity shares, they are the real owners of the company. Yes, and thus the capital raised by issuing the shares is known as ownership capital. If you are issuing equity shares and some of the investor has purchased that shares, then that investors will become the owners of the company, and whatever the capital they bring by purchasing the equity shares, that capital is known as ownership capital or owner's fund. Okay, whatever the capital that is brought by equity shareholders by purchasing the equity shares, they will become the owners of the company, and the capital that they brought, that is known as ownership capital or owner's fund. Okay, so equity shareholders dividend is not fixed. డివిడెంట్ అంటే ఏంటిది మేడం అంటే, ఇప్పుడు బ్యాంక్స్ ఉన్నాయి, బ్యాంక్లో మనం డిపాజిట్ చేస్తే మనకి ఏమొస్తుంది? ఎవ్రీ మంత్ ఫిక్స్డ్ రేట్ ఆఫ్ ఇంట్రెస్ట్ అనేది వస్తుంది. ఏమొస్తుంది? ఫిక్స్డ్ రేట్ ఆఫ్ ఇంట్రెస్ట్ అనేది వస్తుంది. అదేవిధంగా ఈక్విటీ షేర్స్ని ఎవరు హోల్డ్ చేస్తారో, ద పర్సన్ హూ హోల్డ్ ద ఈక్విటీ షేర్స్, that person will get the dividend. ఓకే, ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఎట్లా ఉంటుందో డివిడెంట్ అనేది షేర్స్ మీద ఇస్తాము. ఓకే, బట్ ద డివిడెంట్ ఈజ్ నాట్ ఫిక్స్డ్ ఇన్ ద ఈక్విటీ షేర్స్. ఓకే, ద ఈక్విటీ షేర్ హోల్డర్స్ డివిడెంట్ ఈజ్ నాట్ ఫిక్స్డ్ because they are the owners, they have to bear the losses, they have to take the excess profits, so the dividend is not at all fixed. Means whatever the income that they have to get from the equity shares, that is not at all a fixed income. So merits ante advantages. Merits means advantages. So equity shares do not create any obligation to pay a fixed dividend. So equity shares does not create any kind of obligation. Means must and should. Okay, responsibility. So there is no need to pay fixed dividend to the equity shareholders because they are the real owners of the company. So after giving all people, they will receive the dividend finally. So the dividend is not fixed. Equity shares can be issued without creating any charge over the assets of the company. So these can be issued without creating any charge, over the assets of the company. What are the assets of the company? Plant and machinery, furniture, building, equipment, tools. So there is no need to create charges over the assets of the company. So while issuing, there is no need to create such charges that over the assets. Yes, so that is also advantage. It is a permanent source of capital. Okay, it is a permanent source of capital and company need not repay it. The company will not repay it. Whatever the capital that brought by the equity shareholders, that is not paid by the company. That is permanent source of capital for the company. Permanent mooladhanam adi. Okay, company lone untundi. So no need to pay back to the equity shareholders. But when the company in the situation of liquidation means when the company is closing, okay, when all assets are converting into the cash, okay, when all assets are converting into the cash, liquidation ante when all assets are converting into the cash, then only whatever the capital brought by the equity shareholders is given to the equity shareholders. Then only the share capital of the equity shareholders is repaid. Equity shareholders are the real owners of the company who have the voting rights. Yes, equity shareholders are the real owners of the company. They have the voting rights. By the voting rights, they will select the board of directors, general managers and other directors. They only select by giving vote to the board of directors. In case of profits, equity shareholders are the real gainers. Okay, if there is more profit, then they will take more amount of profit as a dividend by way of increased dividend. By the way of increased dividends and appreciation in the value of the shares. Appreciation means increase. They will increase the value of the share also. So in this way they will gain. When the profit is increased, at that time the dividend will be increased. If they are getting the dividend of every month, they are getting dividend of 2,000, 2,500 another month, some months 1,500. If like this, they have the fluctuation in their dividend. Okay, if there is more profit at the time, they will take something like this dividend, 25,000 rupees as a dividend. And also, if their share value is rupees, one share, for example, the share value is rupees 2,000 rupees, then they will increase the value of the share to 20,000 rupees also. So that's why when there is a profit, there are the real gainers. Equity shareholders are the real gainers. So limitations means the disadvantages of having equity shareholders. Okay, investors who want a steady income. Steady income means fixed income. The investors who want fixed incomes may not prefer equity shares. They should not have to prefer equity shares because the returns are always fluctuating. See, the returns are always fluctuating. Who want the steady income means fixed income, they should not have to prefer the equity shares. Okay. The cost of equity shares is generally more. Okay, the cost of equity shares is generally more as compared to the cost of raising fund through other securities, other sources. Other sources means from banks or from financial institutions. That is very easy, but as compared to the cost of equity shares, the equity shares cost is very more. Generally it is more as compared to raising fund from the other source, means from the banks, from the financial institutions or from the creditors. That is easy than rising from the equity shares. Issue of additional equity shares dilutes, means it reduces, means it will not give any double voting power. Okay, it will not give any double voting power or earning of equity shares. Okay, if they have additional equity shares, okay, ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఎక్స్ అన్న పర్సన్ ఉన్నాడు, అతని దగ్గర ఫస్ట్ 20 ఈక్విటీ షేర్స్ ఉండే, ఇప్పుడు 25 ఈక్విటీ షేర్స్ ఉన్నాయి. 20 ఈక్విటీ షేర్స్ ఉన్నప్పుడు అతనికి 1 ఓటింగ్ రైట్ ఉండే, 25 వచ్చినప్పుడు కూడా 1 ఓటింగ్ రైటే ఉంటుంది. ఇక్కడ ఎర్నింగ్స్ అనేవి ఫ్లక్చువేట్ అయినాయి. 20 ఉన్నప్పుడు, 25 ఉన్నప్పుడు కూడా ఎర్నింగ్స్ అనేవి ఫ్లక్చువేట్ అవుతూనే ఉంటాయి. సో దెర్ ఈజ్ నో ఎనీ ఛాన్స్ ఆఫ్ డైల్యూట్స్, మీన్స్ దెర్ ఈజ్ నో డబుల్. సో 20 షేర్స్ నుంచి 25కి వచ్చిండు కాబట్టి 2 ఓటింగ్ పవర్స్ ఇలాంటివి ఉండవు. సో 1 ఓట్ ఓన్లీ ఈజ్ దేర్. నెక్స్ట్, more legal formalities and procedural delay are involved. So more legal formalities are there and the procedure of issuing the equity share is also take much time while raising fund through the issue of equity shares. So when we want to raise the fund by issuing the equity share, there will be more legal formalities and also it will take the much time in order to raise the capital from the equity share. So these are the main few limitations of the equity share. Okay, these are the merits, means advantages, and these will be the disadvantages of equity shares. So this is about the equity share. Let us meet in other session with other topic, that is preference shares. How many types of preference shares are there, what are the merits of the preference shares, and what are the demerits or limitations or disadvantages of preference shares, that we will discuss in the next session. Okay.